Okay, this next session is going to be on investment and costs and looking at the whole issue of the economics of storage. And I'm delighted to welcome to do the first session here Michael Bubb from Shropshire, been known to many of you, and I gave Michael the title of Why I Invested in Storage, which he thought was a little bit braggish, I think, but I think it's very pertinent, and I think it's great that Michael has put his money where his mouth is and gone and invested in storage, and I wanted him to share some of the reasons he did that with an audience like this, because it's an area that I've been talking about for forever and a day, and it's nice to get a different viewpoint. So Michael is growing 500 acres of potatoes in Shropshire, and he's going to tell us a little bit about his operation. So over to you, Michael. I'll just turn you up on the microphone.
Okay. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. And yes, I wouldn't have agreed to that title at all, but the reason I've taken the trouble this morning is Adrian was a massive help to us when we did the store, because unless you're in that field, actually we didn't have a clue where to start. So, and the other factor, Adrian, is that I have a saying that if I don't frighten myself once a week, I'm not trying hard enough. So this is this week's quota. So a farming friend of mine who taught me at Walford many years ago in Shropshire, he was saying that every farming business comes to a crossroads every 10 years. And he told me that about 30 years, 40 years ago, and I think it's very true. And we were certainly at a crossroads. We were in stores that were nowhere near fit for purpose and going nowhere. And what I should have said, where we're slightly wrong, is it isn't Michael Bubb that built the stores, but it's actually the Barclays Bank that have built them. And I've had the fun of designing and working them all out, and our two sons have got the job of paying for them now. And as we've got customers in the room, we've got suppliers in the room, we've got people I went to Germany with last week in the room, I'm going to have to tell you the whole truth and nothing but the truth. So, yeah, I always try to listen to what other people say. People say I do talk too much, but because if you do an anagram on Michael Bubb, it says I babble too much. But I do try and listen sometimes. And our eldest son, I've got three sons, and our eldest son, Vern, he works in the city with LinkedIn at the moment, and he's been coming home every Christmas for a long time. He's interested in the farm, and we've always tried to learn from him. So we sat down, the three sons and myself, every Christmas and say, you know, what the hell are we doing here, where are we going, etc. And I can remember him saying about 14 years ago, he said, well, look, you're trying to do packing, you're trying to do bags, you're trying to do chips, and you're not doing any of them properly, a few crisps as well. So he said, for goodness sake, get a path and go down it. And if you're not in the top quartile of your customers' suppliers, you're never going to do any good. So from that minute on, we started to try to move differently. And I'm fortunate that our son Jonathan is a total opposite to me. He's the neat, tidy, methodical one. I'm the crazy ideas and try to see the wider picture. So together we have enjoyed the experience so far, but time will tell. So I think I've got most things out the way there. Yeah, another friend of mine, Graham Furness, because, you know, we farmers are always saying, well, the price is down and this market's no good and it's world oversupplied. And Graham Furness, a great friend of mine, he said, you try doing nothing, see what happens. And that's about where we are with storage. You know, if you don't, you've got to do something, or else you're not going to farm. And so we took the view that I've got two young sons in the business, Jonathan and Jim, and the interest rates were low, and I've always had a big overdraft, and we've got an even bigger one now. And yeah, if you look at the cold light today, Nick will perhaps tell us later, it's very difficult to make storage totally stack up. But I think we've got to recognise the customers we're supplying and how important it is for them to keep their factories 12 months of the year going. And I've got a friend in Cheshire who does, I don't know what, it's 400 or 500 acres, and they're all gone by the end of August. Well, we haven't got ground that suits that at all, no way. We have got some early land, but we've got a complete range of land, and so I think we better start this thing going, else I'll be here all day. Where are we? How does it go? You going to start? Do I just do that? Hey? Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, so I was a third generation farmer, and my sort of age group were born gamblers, I'm afraid, because we saw the 75, 76 bonanza where Philip Solari managed to grow 30 tonne of Pentland Crown, £200 a tonne, £6,000, and one top of the range Jaguar, and he had £1,000 a change at a 1 acre. So you can tell. We couldn't believe what was happening then, but because we've always been hoping ever since, but we realised in this day and age, with consumer trends totally different to where we are now, or where we were then, you know, there was no way. It gradually dawned on me. I was always chasing that horizon, but it gradually, and I always used to say, well, why supply McCain's? I might as well give them a check. I can't do it for that money, but it suddenly twigged that if it was our overhead structure that was not right, our varieties weren't right, our efficiency wasn't right, so that's why we've gone the rate we have. So yeah, Northern Europe, we've got some serious competition there, and if we ignore it, I think we'd be at our cost. No eelworm, no destoning, hardly any irrigation, and 20 factories looking for their business, and Rotterdam, where they can put chips anywhere in the world at a minute's notice. So it's a pretty serious operation over there. Right, so old store done that, Crossroads done that. Focus on the customer, full summer production. Yeah, okay, next one. First step. Yeah, so we had no idea where to start. We pulled a shed manufacturer in, and he said, well, what do you want? We said, well, we haven't a bloody clue. We just want some walls and what have you. And so he said, okay, I'll do some drawings. Well, of course, they were not fit for purpose. We hadn't a clue really what we were asking for in the first place. And so gradually, we went on lots of different farms, which we were very appreciative of, because it's only by talking to other farmers that you really see how they've looked at it. And so that was most useful, although one of them did say, don't bother investing in storage. But we still went ahead. And so we decided to go for, the gentleman's in the room today somewhere, Ray, so we eventually headed towards a turnkey operation, because you might say, well, that's an expensive way of doing it, and I think it is, but I took the view that ventilation was absolutely crucial, and also CIPC, as we've heard, and I couldn't see any point in compromising anything for the sake of asking one person to take responsibility for every facet of the store. And when you look at the steel that goes in, and the concrete, and the fans, and the electrics, just simply getting the sequencing right is a job in itself, let alone the design, and the responsibility of keeping an eye on us afterwards was also very important. So we started on store one, which did have a 250-tonne box store alongside 2,400-tonne bulk split in two. And I do like a few boxes about it. It does give a lot of flexibility. A lot of our neighbours said, well, why are you going for a bulk store? Because boxes are a lot better, because if they go rotten, you can fetch them out. And I said, well, actually, you've got to ask yourself, why have they gone rotten in the first place? And quite often it's because they've heated up and you know, the air can't get through and they go rotten. So, and plus the fact that our area is not a traditional storage area, so that was a leap in faith, I have to say, on sandy soils, And so far, touch wood, we're reasonably okay. There's always some issues, but a total rot down at the minute we've avoided, although Robin Griffiths did say that one day you'll get one, my lad, so we'll have to be ready. But the beauty of what we've done, I think, is that we can blast out. We do have had the odd rot, and I think it's mainly caused by trailer loads getting a bit damp. We've had the odd rot, and we can physically blast it out and hold it within reason. Okay, so yeah, well, shed one, I tried to get a grant on it, and typically they close the department down, the West Midlands, and so we just finished putting the first one up, and they said, oh yeah, we've just formed a new section here, you can have that grant if you want it now. And I said, oh, no, yeah, it's typical, isn't it? So I said, okay, we'll go for it, because we'd never get a shed as economical as that ever again. We also do grow, I don't know whether this is allowed or not, but we also grow flowers, which we make confetti of. So if anybody's got a wedding, see me afterwards. So, and they like the idea of drying the flowers and storing the potatoes because it utilised the building for, it's hard work to get the grant, not an easy ticket. Now our neighbour, Brian, he said, I don't really like the colour of your shed. He said, I'd much rather my dark blue grey shed. And I said, well, that's fair enough, Brian. I said, but the point is that our shed will cost £3,000 a year less to run than your shed because it reflects the colour. So that's just a simple reason why somebody who's specialised in it, there's so many facets you wouldn't think of, I think, if you try to do too much yourself. Okay, so the aims of the new sheds have got to be, we've all heard about CIPC. I think we're on about 25, 26 grams per tonne at the moment in 2 applications. And it seems to be that we've kept potatoes through till June, if need be. I like concrete. We've got a big concrete walls. You'll see in a minute concrete tunnel. And I think that having a mass of concrete helps regulate the temperature, certainly as you move into the spring. Although we have got cooling now in the second shed, cooling and heating. So we farmers can't do a lot to add value, really, other than starting a chip or a crisp factory, which I think would be pretty scary. And so, but, you know, putting a store up is something that we should be able to cope with. I was saying it spreads the workload. We've experienced about 5% weight loss at the moment. Sugar control, we currently have got an issue and we're not quite sure why. Bulk of the store's okay. I would imagine it's got to be a field issue, but we're on the case. Humidification, I think, is extremely important. I think we keep the store about 95%. And I think that is, and I think, we won't tell McCain's, but I think we put 35 tonnes of water in last year, so it's quite handy to be able to keep the water going. So CO2, again, is controlled. And the other big factor, I think, is it spreads the workload immensely. And the other really big factor is come September, October, and you are your own customer. So there's no waiting for lorries, no waiting for anybody. You just get those elevators in and you just go for it, 300, 400, 500 tonne a day, and it's a real pleasure to do. And that's what I think is a big factor, because you can maximise your growing period knowing that you've got that control of getting them out. Because we've had every scenario in getting them out, I can assure you. And to get them out in good conditions, there is a big value on that in lots of ways. Some of these other things we'll cover in a minute. So that was the start of the store. Sec store 2. Interesting, this was actually a shed we used for the flowers, and Ray came up with a really good idea of a doorway, which sounds bizarre, but it works. A door from one shed to the other through the concrete, and a door in the tunnel. It's not all good news, because he forgot to re-drill the stanchions, didn't you, Ray? So we had to quite a job re-drilling those, but the insulation of the other shed has saved a bit of cost. The other factor was that we learned that we could spoke to the accountant, and a lot of the expense could be treated as plant and machinery, because the store is a completely integral store of strength, steel. Every part of the store is doing something useful. So even the concrete, as you'll see in a minute. So that does make a big difference as opposed to no capital allowances. I know we're not making a lot of profit with wheat where it is, but those capital allowances can stack up and they are useful tools to have. So you can start and see the complexity of store 2 again coming together. And I mean, just, you know, the thought of going there, talking to the electrician, the concrete man and the shed man, and trying to get them all work together, you know, we just didn't want that sort of hassle. So you can see it's, and the safety factor, you know, it's surprising how many sheds these days are still going up without what I would consider sensible safety factors. So again, we didn't want to take that risk. That's another shot of the stores. The interesting thing is the canopy on the right-hand side there. We love our canopy. I think it's about 45 metres by 18 metres without any stanchions in the centre, and it gives us maximum flexibility to grade in and out of store to a large extent. So, and obviously, getting the store time, you can see we're planting potatoes there, so there's nothing to beat getting everything ready on time, because it's just what you don't need is lateness, really. So that's just a shot of the floor level laterals, but again, the complexity of that job is not to be underestimated at all. This is it taking place, and we were in Holland last week, and I thought that the complete plenum chamber under the floor was a good idea, but I've heard reasons why, because when you fill in this with an elevator and you get those 2 horrible loads that are going to let you down, with this we can blast those particular laterals with the air to get us out of trouble. I think the height is about 5.5 metres, so that again makes it more cost effective. I think in Yorkshire they've gone to over 6 metres. But you know, putting this floor down is a really specialised job. The guys came there and they knew what they were on for pretty well. So that's a finished job of what we're looking at. The boards do take some hammer with the buckets. That was on shed 2, we went for an air source heat pump that could do cold and hot glycol, because for the flour drying we want to reduce humidity and lift the temperature, whereas obviously the potatoes has got a different requirement. Big circulating fans again on a variable speed, which is ideal. This particular design has got a sort of a V-shaped tunnel, and the laterals are also tapered. So that's the roof a shot from the roof. I think the quality of the person putting the whole thing together, you can judge it, having scrambled all across Europe up some ridiculous stairs, never safe, and is how good is the stair system. Sounds simple, but I tell you, we visited 10 stores in Europe, and there wasn't one of them that had got a safe set of stairs. So both our stores have, which I think is important. Again, just little acts of detail. That's the tapered aspect of the fan house, so that we can fill the corners with the elevators. And we did put a lot of coils in the roof to do with cooling and heating. And that's a finished shot of how it looked when it's finished. So that's where we are today. We've got Piper in the one store and Pentland Dell in the other. And yeah, so that's the end of the sign. Any questions? Any questions?
Thank you very much, Michael. Have we got any questions for Michael? We've got a couple of minutes. Any questions?
I think the cost per tonne people might ask, and perhaps
You've
a bit embarrassed
just pinched my question.
Yeah, I thought you might. So basically, store 1, which was difficult to extrapolate because we did a chemical store along, you know, not too far away in the same project, and a tractor store as well. But as far as I could work out, it was about £178 a tonne, and that was in 2011. Then the store 2, 2014, with no grant, and it is actually capable of 3,600 tonnes, although at the moment we aren't totally utilising it. came out at £263 a tonne, and then after the grant it was £158 a tonne. So that's approximately where we were.
And if you turn the clock back to 2010, would you do it all again?
Would we do it all again? Well, I'll go back to what I was saying. You try doing nothing, see what happens. You know, the lads have got to get up in the morning, they've got something to do. There's something about bulk potatoes, and you know, that seems to appeal to the young, up-and-coming young man, that you get the tonnage going, and yeah, we just got to give them something to do. Although we've got a successful flour operation, Jim looks after that, and it's given us a nice sort of spread of responsibilities for the two lads. We've also, what I did do about 7 years ago, it's really to do with the flowers, but my wife and I, totally different personalities. I'm the one that creates the chaos, and she's the one that tidies everything up. And we couldn't agree on website utilisation for the flowers, and so we brought a non-executive director in, a chap called Chris Ball, who's ex-managing director of Northern Foods, travels down from Yorkshire, looks after 1 or 2 businesses in our area, and he's put the lads through their paces. He wouldn't let them spend the money unless they could justify it, and one way was to do more contracts. So yeah, I think at the moment we would, because, as I say, what else do you do?
Sorry, just one. More of a point than a question. You started by saying you needed to be in the top quartile of your customer base, and just speaking on behalf of McCain and knowing that you won the Top Grower Award a couple of years ago, I think you firmly are in that place. So I think the work and investment and time spent on grading and storage has certainly paid off where you're.
Thank you very much. I wouldn't have said that, and I have to actually just, there's an element of truth in what you say. It is Jonathan and Jim do the work. It's not to do with me. I just keep an eye from the outside. We've got a very good agronomist as well, Dennis Buckley, and it has to be a mega team effort. And but the trouble is, when you get to those high levels, there's only one way, and we're always conscious of that. Yeah.
Bill.
If you were putting another store up, would you put a box store up or a bulk store?
Well, I think I'd look at the marketplace first. As an example, I was with my good mate Chris Taylor. We go on all these trips around the world, and he's an organic grower with many different varieties, wanting to store till after Christmas, and in his case, box store undoubtedly is right for him. I'm very impressed with the boxes we saw in Europe. Their quality of make is just outstanding, and I've got no hesitation at a box store now. They've got this sort of sheet over the top of a plenum. You know, it works really well. Our forklift, this chap we saw in Holland, his wife drove the forklift, his son drove the forklift, and he drove the forklift, and the boxes were immaculate. And I'm afraid we haven't got quite that calibre of people around all the time. Now, for bulk, I think it's cheaper. I think, you've got to remember that with the bulk, all of the air, all of the time, goes around all the potatoes. Whoops. Ray told me to say that. But it is true, I think, with the bulk. So we, in our case, for bulk, for French fry production, we like the bulk, but there's no question boxes can work, I'm sure. Carefully designed.
Okay, I think we've got to draw things to a close. So thank you very much.